Greetings all. Dr. Raphael X here with a special guest, my friend here, Mr. Eric Sammons, the editor of Crisis Magazine. And before anything else, let us begin with the sign of the cross, remembering our baptism. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. All right, so please subscribe, click on that like button, notifications button, all that good stuff. And hey, man, thanks for coming on. I appreciate your time.
Hey, I really appreciate you having me on the program.
And people ask me, well, what are you going to interview Eric on? And I'm like, well, Bitcoin. And they're like, what? So apparently you have some economic background here. Maybe not, but I think this is a really practical application of kind of certain principles out there when you talk about moral money. So he wrote a book on Sophia Press, Moral Money, The Case for Bitcoin. So I'm going to play a little bit of devil's advocate
Sure.
just because it's yeah, a lot of people just have certain people actually brought me up these questions themselves. So what kind of brought you to write this book? It's really interesting, the story behind it also.
Yeah, so the truth is I've been interested in economics, technical the tech world for many years. So my undergrad degree back in the early 90s was in systems analysis, which was, computers and analyzing systems with computers. But I also had a concentration. We had to pick a concentration. I picked economics. And
Right.
so I learned all that in college. And then I got involved I was a software developer for years, but I was always reading economics on the side. And I particularly liked reading more Austrian economics people. And so I learned a lot about this over the years. And so I had this tech background and I had this economics background. And this is all before Bitcoin came to be. And during that time, I came to realize, again, before Bitcoin even existed, that our current money system is immoral, is fundamentally immoral. So what we call the fiat currency system, where a government can just simply print money out of nothing, just whenever they feel like it. And I go through in the book all the details of why, but essentially I realized this is broken, this is immoral. And I thought, well, at the time I thought, well, returning to gold
Mhm.
would be a moral system. However, I realized, okay, but we're in the 21st century here. Gold just doesn't work as far as actually being used as money without having a representation of it, i.e., paper or digital things, which then can become and did become in history another fiat system.
Right.
And so this was like something I realized was a problem, but I didn't ever think of a solution or anything like that. But there were people who thought that, like I did, much smarter than me, who were thinking of solutions. And so Bitcoin came out in 2009. I didn't hear about it until 2013 because when it first started, it was pretty small audience of people who knew about it. But as soon as I heard about it, I was like, okay, I think this is it. I think this is the solution to the problem because I felt like this is a system that has the moral properties of gold with the use and efficiency properties of our current digital paper money system. And so I felt like that's a great combination. So that's how I came to really embrace Bitcoin 12 years ago. And I wrote a book in 2015 that was self-published. It was just a basic primer on Bitcoin because I knew most people didn't know anything about it. I actually kind of made it based kind of like the Baltimore Catechism. I made a question answer book, 101 questions and answers. And that was fine, but that was a little minor thing. And then though, I've written other books before on Catholic topics, and I just kept on coming back to me that we have an immoral system and we need an alternative. And I feel like Bitcoin is the alternative. And so that's why I end up writing this book.
Now, what I like, what's new about this book, because usually people would think, in the Catholic realm, that the use of money is immoral. But you say,
Right.
yes, that's true, but and you don't see this in Catholic doctrine, that the actual money, the actual system, there's a moral money. If you could talk a little bit about that, because how some people say, well, you mentioned systems of sin, for example,
Right.
or correct me if I'm wrong. Some people say, well, isn't that kind of like the whole systematic racism type of thing? Like, isn't sin individuals only, or is it like, well, it could be system, but can you explain how that is?
That's a great question because it is true that the primary focus of the church over the years when it comes to money has been how we as individuals use it. and that's where we can really fall into a lot of immoral problems. Obviously, greed and envy, all those things can lead to using money in an immoral way. And we and our Lord talked about money a lot. And so he knew that it was something that we have to be careful about. But I would argue, and fiat money is relatively a new system historically. It's only been really in use for about 100 years. I mean, some existed before that, but not on the wide scale that has been for the last 100 years. And so this often happens in church history where something new comes up, and it takes a while for the church is like, let's actually talk about that. And so what I argue in the book is that fiat money is one of these structures of sin, which is what JP2, Pope John Paul II, talked about a lot. And he talked about things like abortion, for example. Obviously, if a person procures an abortion, that's an individual sin, and that person must go to confession, all of those things. However, what JP2 was saying is that abortion has become like a structure of sin in that we all participate in some way. If you pay taxes in America, I'm sorry, but you help pay for abortions. And this is something, in other words, we are attached to these sins, right, even though I'm not saying we're culpable and the Lord will judge us if we pay our taxes. What I'm saying, though, is that we are part of all this. And so John Paul II talked about we need to work not only against combating individual sin, which is important, but also these structures of sin. And I would say all of us part of this fiat currency system, we all use it. I use it. Everybody uses it. We're part of this structure of sin. I'm not saying it's an individual sin, but I am saying it's something that as Catholics we should look at and say the structure itself leads to sin, individual sinning, just like Planned Parenthood being funded by the government leads to more people committing a sin. Likewise, the government using this fiat currency system leads to more people committing sins by being part of the system.
Right, right. Yeah, no, that makes sense. And I like how you put the seven characteristics of money, basically. And it would seem that Bitcoin fits them all. But my question is, because one of them is stability. If you don't mind going through the seven,
Right.
but one of like stability, it would seem that Bitcoin, because I mean, I bought Bitcoin a while back, but I sold it right away because it dropped. And I bought it again recently because it's going
Yeah.
up, and it dropped like below 100 grand. So I was like, oh, I don't know what to do. So how is that? Isn't it not stable?
That's I love that question because, okay, so there's the seven properties of money, but then there's also what I call the kind of 8 characteristics or principles of
Hmm.
moral money.
Hmm.
And when we're talking about stability, that's one of the principles of moral money. A moral money needs to be stable. And I say that, I'm taking that, by the way, from various church teachings on this. I have the reference in the book. I don't know off the top of my head. And it's true. There's no question that Bitcoin goes up and down, up and down. Like I said, I've been involved for 12 years. I've seen it go up like hundreds of percent points at very quickly and go down 80% as well. I mean, when I first got involved in Bitcoin, it was under $1,000. I saw it spike up to 20,000, drop back down to 3,000. I saw it spike up to 60,000, drop back down to 15,000. Now it's hovering somewhere around 100,000, and it's going to do it again in the future. So what do I mean by how can I claim that Bitcoin is moral money if it's not really stable? What I would say, that we have to look at kind of the life cycle of Bitcoin. It's a very new form of money. It's still developing into a full-fledged form of money. It's only 16 years old. Compare that to gold, which is 1,000 years old, even fiat money, which is over 100 years old. And so what's happening at the beginning stages of this is people are determining, okay, what is this actually worth? What is one Bitcoin worth? And that's the market kind of playing out and saying, and so over time, though, I strongly believe that it will become less volatile because more people own it and just basically accept it as, okay, this is a form of money. In the early days, especially, you saw these wild swings. Why? Because there's just a few people, relatively speaking, maybe a few thousand even only, who could really change. One person could literally go in there and buy like $100,000 worth of Bitcoin back in like maybe 2011, and it would swing the price way up. Or same things, they sold it, swing it way down. Now, though, we have more and more people every year. Now there's a lot of companies and even governments who are buying Bitcoin. And so what that does is that over time, that will stabilize it. I'm not claiming that today it won't go up and down. I will say, though, the history of Bitcoin has been very consistent in one way. It always eventually goes up, in that if you've owned Bitcoin for at least 4 years, you are never behind. That's a fact of, if you look at its history, that if you own Bitcoin for over 4 years, you will be up. And there's a reason for that. That's not just because it's lucky or something like that, but because of the dynamics of the Bitcoin network, how it generates new Bitcoin, people buying it and things like that. That makes it eventually, it will go up. And the reason it goes up is twofold. One is more and more people realize the value of it, but also because what it's being priced in, which is dollars, is devaluing over time. Because, for example, I think I saw just the other day where $100 in 2020, so just 5 years ago, is worth $95 today.
Yeah.
And so Bitcoin keeps that stability in the sense that if you owned one Bitcoin in 2020, you held it till today, and it was $100 worth, it'd be worth, I think, 120 or something like that, or maybe even more today. Whereas a dollar, if you held a dollar, we think of the dollar as the most stable. But
Right.
if you held a dollar from 2020 till today, it'd only be worth 95 cents. So you see how, or say $100 worth only $95 today.
Right.
So you see how, what is stable here? I mean, yes, in that time, we feel like the dollar hasn't changed its value, but it really has. And we feel like Bitcoin's gone crazy, but ultimately it just kind of steadily went up.
Right. I like how in the book you mentioned kind of there's a social moral value in inflation. How inflation in a sense is the government not acting according to like what we had in the previous administration, just printing of money chaotically, and that automatically makes the dollar go down. And yeah, so Bitcoin seems to kind of be a parallel system to that. If you can explain, because some people, one of the and I believe you put that as an objection in your book, and then we get a little more into the morality of it. Because I remember President Trump said, like, what is he was even questioning it not too long ago. He's like, what does it
Yeah.
refer to? Like, what is it? Is it doesn't it refer to nothing? Is there actual coins? Are you mining digital things? Or what is, if you can explain a little bit, because I think most people do not, I do not understand the concept fully myself. So I did read, actually, I got up to the objections part, but yeah, if you can explain, that would be great a little bit behind.
That is the biggest hurdle. There's no question it's the biggest hurdle, because we're talking about something that does not exist in the physical world. Now, there are physical things in the world that exist to support it, like all the servers and miners and things like that, which I can explain in a second. But essentially what it is it is a computer, what's called a computer protocol. And that's like a part of software, but it's a protocol, means like the way something operates on, like in this case, on the internet. So for example, email is a protocol, whereas Gmail, for example, is the software program that runs on that underlying email protocol. There's a reason why when you send something through Gmail, it can get to a Hotmail account with no problem, because there's a protocol they all follow, the rules of how email works. Well, what happened was back in 2009, Satoshi Nakamoto, the synonymous name of the person who invented Bitcoin, he created a protocol, which is really like a financial protocol, how Bitcoin could be transported to and from on the internet. 100%, it's 100% digital. So that, for example, if I own a Bitcoin, meaning I have the right to spend that Bitcoin, the protocol knows I'm the only person who I have the keys, so I can spend it. Nobody else can spend it. If I try to spend Bitcoin I don't really own, the protocol knows you don't actually have the authority to do that. And the protocol is run by tens of thousands of computers all around the world, of just individuals who run their own what are called Bitcoin nodes. I have one in my house. It just runs. And what it's doing is it's constantly checking all the transactions to say, okay, this guy says he's sending 0.01 Bitcoin to this guy. Does he really have the right to do that? If so, we'll let it go through. If not, we won't.
Hmm.
And so what Satoshi did when he created this protocol, he made the property. Other people have done this before, by the way. There have been a lot of attempts before Satoshi to create digital money, but they all failed. And they all failed because of some weakness. Like the biggest weakness was they would try to create it with a centralized server, meaning they owned a company that ran it all. Well, what happens then is when somebody hacks that server, you're dead. Or if the government says, we don't like you doing this, you're gone. Another technical problem would be some people create, all of a sudden people figure out how to counterfeit it. Because think about it. When I send you an image by email, You get that image, you just copy it and send it to somebody else. Well, if you could do that with the digital money, the money's worthless. If I can send you money and you can just copy it and paste it and send as much as you want, it's worthless. So the Bitcoin protocol handles all those situations. That makes sure you can't copy Bitcoin illegitimate. You can't send to somebody who, if you don't really own it. It's not centralized. Like I said, there's 20,000 or plus servers, computers running this. So there's no one place, no one person that the government can say we're shutting this down. So all these things make it so that it's really the money that resides natively on the internet. And we've seen in 16 years, there's been lots of attempts to hack it. There have been governments that have tried to shut it down. There have been people who tried to find ways to counterfeit it, and every single one of them failed, which is why the value of Bitcoin keeps going up, because more and more people realize, oh, this is actually pretty amazing what this thing can do. It's not just somebody who just created a program that's going to get hacked next week or get shut down next week. It really has the properties of true money, even though it resides 100% on the internet.
Wow, so that's fascinating. I did hear about that characteristic of being decentralized as very attractive, why people and essentially can't be regulated by, like a tyrannical government or something like that, which
Right.
yeah, it's definitely a plus. If you can, because you have alluded to many reasons, but if you can kind of maybe some reasons you haven't mentioned to why is the most moral that you believe, or maybe you have mentioned them all, but
Yeah, no, I would say I mentioned before there's 7 properties of money, and 3 of them really have to do with the morality of money. And that is, number one, that's verifiable, meaning it's not easy to counterfeit. Now, let's be honest, our current dollars, they're very difficult to counterfeit now. The technology has gotten to the point where they meet this property almost as well as Bitcoin. Not quite as well, but I mean, really, they're good enough. So that one, they kind of both check off. But the other 2 are very important, because this is where they fail. The fiat fails and Bitcoin succeeds. First is that it's scarce. Obviously, we already mentioned how the government can just print more money. And when they do that, they devalue everybody's money. The reason I say it's a moral problem is because what it does is, imagine just like your hardworking kind of lower middle class dad trying to support his family, doing everything right. He works a job that, isn't the best paying. Maybe he's making $40,000, $50,000 a year or something like that. And so he doesn't have a lot of savings, but he's like, I got to do the right thing. I got to save up, maybe help my kids with college, but maybe just save for retirement, save for a rainy day. I just want to make sure if something bad happens, I don't go in a lot of debt, try and do things right. Well, so if he just puts it, like, for example, it saves it under his mattress in cash, that's going to devalue and be worth less and less every year. Even if he puts in a savings account at the bank, the same thing happens, because the savings rate is never as much as the inflation rate. So essentially what happens is, because all this new money is being created, so inflation keeps going up, it's really it's devaluing the savings of that hardworking individual, because it's not scarce. Bitcoin, however, is scarce. It's built into the protocol that only 21 million Bitcoin will ever be created. In fact, over 19 million have already been created. And the next less than 2 million are going to be created over the next 100 years. So it's already baked in that there's only 21 million. And while technically somebody can say, well, can't you just change the program? You can, but you need the buy-in of all those people who operate nodes, all those 20,000 people, and they have no incentive to do it, because it will devalue what they own. Why would I say, yeah, let's create some more? It makes my Bitcoin worth less. So I'm never going to approve that. So it's scarce. That's where it really beats fiat money in morality. I'd also say the last property of money I would say that's important when it comes to morality is independence. And this is where fiat money fails and Bitcoin shines. Independence may mean, is there a person or a small group of people, organizations that control the money supply? Because if they do, they have great power over you, really immoral power over you, because they can decide there's more money in the system. They can do whatever they want with it. They can print new money to do whatever they want. For example, let's say a government wants to fund a social program to kind of buy votes. They can just print more money to pay for it. If they want to fund an unpopular war, let's say somebody wanted to go to a president wanted to go to war, nobody supported it and wouldn't pay tax dollars for it, well, he could just print more money to do it. With Bitcoin, it's completely independent. There's no person or persons who can actually change the rules of Bitcoin. Even if Satoshi Nakamoto, who has been out of sight for about 12 years now, actually more now, about 13 or 14 years, he's not been heard from. Nobody knows who he is. Let's say somebody came back and proved he was actually Satoshi Nakamoto. Even he can't change it. Because if he said, I'm going to change the program, the protocol to make it so there's more than 21 million Bitcoin, or to send it all to me or something like that, all those node operators around the world would be like, no, we're just not going to do that. And so he has no more power than anybody else. So it's independent. Those are the properties I think that really make Bitcoin more moral than fiat. Now, just to be clear, gold also has those properties. Gold is scarce. It's not as scarce as Bitcoin is because Bitcoin has a hard cap. You can always mine for more gold. In fact, one day we might be able to get lots of gold from asteroids potentially, which could devalue gold. And it's also independent generally. It's not like anybody controls the gold supply. There's some manipulation of it. So I would say that Bitcoin's slightly more moral than gold because of the scarcity issue, but it's really very close. But it's way, way more moral than our current fiat system.
Right, and it's more portable. I mean, Bitcoin will put it's definitely portable. It's just
right,
there.
and that's where Bitcoin really shines over
Right,
gold. Like I'm not saying Bitcoin. I'm saying Bitcoin and gold are in a battle for which is more moral. I would say Bitcoin's slightly more moral, but both are way more moral than fiat. But when we move to efficiency and usefulness, those properties, fiat currency is actually very useful and efficient. You can send it very easily.
right.
Gold you can't, but Bitcoin you can. So like I said, it takes the good moral properties of gold and it combines with the good efficiency properties of fiat money.
So the only worry I have is because hard assets are independent from the digital world. So I think definitely hard assets is something that's not going to go away. So the thing is, I'm a teacher and I know my students use AI sometimes, and I have an AI detector, but the AI that the students are using to cheat, it's smarter. It surpasses under the surveillance of the AI detector.
Right.
So couldn't it be possible that, of course, man cannot, it seems too complicated for man, too decentralized. Isn't it possible that someone makes some type of AI that kind of, gains control or manipulates it somehow? I know you said it has been attempted, but I mean, AI is like the sky's the limit.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think really, I wouldn't say AI is the real danger as much as quantum computers. I think
Mm,
that's the real thing. Now, I'm a former computer programmer, so I would never say a software program is unhackable. That just simply is not possible to create a perfectly unhackable program. So I'm not going to claim that. I'm going to claim in practice, however, we've seen that Bitcoin has been unhackable, that people have tried, very smart people have had incentive to do it, and they just simply haven't been able to. So I would say, practically speaking, is unhackable. However, there is the concern long-term about what's called quantum computing, which is basically a computer that runs completely differently than our current system. And in the sense that it's far more powerful for certain capabilities. And one of the things it could potentially do is it could hack encryption. And that's a big concern because Bitcoin is a cryptocurrency. Cryptocurrency comes from the term of encryption, cryptography that basically secures the currency. And so if you could potentially, in theory, in the future, create a quantum computer that could hack the encryption of Bitcoin, thus making it possible to steal it, send what you don't own, things like that. But I'd say there's two real answers to that in my mind. The first one is that I've seen over the years, if you look at kind of the history of computer programming, there's always fears that some new technology is going to come that's going to overwhelm something. What usually happens, like a defense offense thing, what usually happens is they work in tandem in that the hackers are advancing, but also the good guys are advancing at the same time. So yes, there might be a brief period where a hacker gets some advantage because they get some technology. Well, then what happens is the good guys quickly build defenses based on that technology to defend against it. We've
right.
seen this throughout history that when you just talk about like cryptography in general, this is always what happens is, advances are made like in World War II. There was advances made by the Allies against the encryption of the Germans. But then eventually that became something the Germans and anybody else could defend against. And so that continues to happen. So I think that's the first thing, is that I don't foresee a possibility where all of a sudden a quantum computer could just be kind of come out of nowhere, completely hack Bitcoin, and nobody would be prepared for it. So that's because, and there actually already is work and talk about making Bitcoin quantum proof. The second thing I would say is, honestly, if we get quantum computers like that, Bitcoin's the last thing we have to worry about, because you know what that means? That means it really could hack every single encryption out there, meaning your bank account, government account, nuclear silos, everything like that, all is hackable. And I don't think we're going to be too worried about Bitcoin if all that other stuff is available to the world. I don't think that's going to actually happen. Like I said, I think the defense will keep up with the offense. But ultimately, Bitcoin does use similar encryption to what's used to encrypt your secure transactions on the internet. So if one of them's susceptible, they're all susceptible. And I think for example, if I was let's say I'm a hacker who got access to some quantum computer super powerful, I actually wouldn't go after Bitcoin, because I know if I hacked Bitcoin, and that the value of Bitcoin would plummet to almost nothing, and so I get nothing for my effort. What I would do is I'd be hacking bank accounts and
Right.
getting, because like that would go to nothing because they just print more money. So I would be doing that rather than hacking Bitcoin. There's actually an incentive built into Bitcoin. If you hack it, you actually devalue what you just stole. Whereas I could steal a bunch of gold, gold's still worth something. If I steal a bunch of Bitcoin, people know it's through a hack of Bitcoin itself, the
Right.
value of Bitcoin goes down.
So yeah, so there wouldn't be any.
What's the point?
Yeah,
Yeah.
what's the point of it? Yeah, interesting. Now, is there the danger, because I know for moral money, moral investing, there's something called Ave Maria mutual funds that you are promoting companies, corporations that promote Catholic ideals. Is there something that Bitcoin promotes, or no? It's just
That's a great question. I want to tell a quick story about that, because when I was after my first job in the 1990s, I left the company after a few years, and I had a 401k with them, and I had to transfer it to my own IRA because I wasn't with the company anymore. And I transferred to an IRA, and I got a mutual fund, just a generic mutual fund. And I remember getting a prospectus for it, like about maybe a year or two after I had it, and I noticed that they had added Playboy magazine as one of
mm,
the stocks to the portfolio. So I contacted him and said, I'd like to ask you to divest of that company, and explained why. And I'm a tiny little investor, so I know they don't necessarily listen to me, but I thought I might as well try. And they said, no, we're going to keep it. We think it's good financial, blah, blah, blah. So I was like, okay, I have to now no longer own this mutual fund. This is before Ave Maria, I think. I think Ave Maria started funds. I think it started right soon after this. So I just decided, okay, I'm just going to buy some of my own stocks, do research on companies, find out what they're doing. Well, over time, I couldn't even do that because, like, I'm from Cincinnati, Ohio. Our big company here is Procter and Gamble, and so I owned P&G stock for a very long time. Had my kids on it and stuff like that. Well, they went all in with the wokeness, with the pride stuff, with all that stuff, and I was like, no, I just morally don't feel right owning that. So my point is, it's a real issue. It's a continual issue, because you could even talk about, like, okay, how about Amazon or Walmart exploiting people, things like that. I mean, there's so many moral issues involved that, honestly, that's one of the things I love about Bitcoin. Bitcoin isn't owned by anybody, in the sense that there's no person controlling it. It's
right.
a form of money. It's like saying, if you own gold, there's no moral problem with that, in the sense that, because nobody controls gold, it's not benefiting, like, some immoral, it might be benefiting an immoral person if they bought gold themselves or something like that. But the point is, as a form of money, owning gold is just an amoral, in a sense, action in itself. Bitcoin's exactly the same, because it's not like a company. There's not any person or organization running it. If, like, there was a Bitcoin corporation that controlled it, and all of a sudden they started doing woke stuff or anti-Catholic stuff, sure, that'd be a problem. But that's the beauty of it. It's completely decentralized. Nobody controls it, owns it, just like nobody controls or owns gold.
Now, what you're saying, does that apply to all cryptocurrency? Because I know they have something called meme coins. I invested some time ago in Dogecoin, which
Yeah,
actually went
we
up.
all have.
There was a huge kind of, I don't know, it's like a frenzy with
Yeah.
Dogecoin for a time. Um, but the meme, does that apply to all cryptos, including the meme coins?
No, actually, it doesn't. It applies to really no cryptocurrency other than Bitcoin.
Oh, okay.
Bitcoin's the first cryptocurrency, and then others were created. And I will say this: okay, there are now hundreds of thousands of other cryptocurrencies, meme coins. I would say, argue, about 99.9% of them are all trash. I mean, they're just get rich quick. They're scams. They're just, they're just dumb. There are a few that are interesting technical projects. And I would judge them like a tech stock, not like a form of money. That's the real difference between Bitcoin and, like, for example, Ethereum or
Right.
Solana or these other cryptocurrencies. They might have a real tech use. They might have a real use case for, like, okay, but first of all, they are controlled by individuals. It's not like Bitcoin where nobody controls it. Individuals actually control Ethereum, they control Solana and these other
Mhm.
cryptocurrencies.
I
And
see.
so you do have the problem of, if they start doing something funny, then all of a sudden, are you supporting them? Also, they could take their bags and leave, and all of a sudden, what happens to you then? But like I said, the majority, I've owned some in the past, all these things. I've owned Ethereum and Solano and all these other ones as well. And so, like, I realize, and you can make money sometimes,
Right.
but it really is like gambling. It's like a step between gambling and tech stocks. I mean, it's basically kind of in that middle ground right there. Some of them are just pure gambles, and you're just hoping, there's nothing behind it. You're just hoping enough people buy it, they'll spike the price, and that's what meme coins usually are. Well, let's
Right.
spike the price in the next 24 hours, whatever, and I'm going to try and make a buck on it. If you do that, okay, you're doing that. I mean, there's some questionable morality at times with that, but it's not strictly immoral necessarily to always do something like that. But that's not a form of money. That is just simply a gambling opportunity. And some of the cryptocurrencies that are trying to be tech projects, those also, that, like I said, is closer to the like a tech stock. Judge it like a tech stock would. See
Right.
the morality of the people running it. Do you trust them? Do you think the project is worthwhile? I've come to the personal conclusion it's not really worth it, any of them, because I don't want to spend the time and energy to try to analyze which ones are legit, which ones aren't. I mean, some hit, some don't. Most are kind of going down in terms of Bitcoin, like their price versus Bitcoin have been going down for years now. Like Ethereum, it's gone down in terms of Bitcoin over the past 4 years considerably. And that's because Bitcoin really is the one form of money. The rest of them, I think people are realizing, they're tech stocks or they're gambling, and that's all they are.
Right. Yeah. I think you're what you provide uh, regarding doctrine could be very useful, and I think with Pope Leo the 14th, he kind of wants to tackle this issue of tech, especially with taking that name with what we're in the fourth industrial revolution, at least according to the World Economic Forum. We're in this digital revolution, and it seems like Catholic teaching really needs to, the magisterium really needs to illuminate us in these issues. So I think we need tech savvy theologians and maybe possibly a tech savvy pope if we don't have one now. So what say you about the future of Catholic moral teachings? Because this has to be a question, an important question in the very near future. Now, actually, now. Oh, did I lose you? Can you hear me? See if I. Hello? Let's see. Comes back. Hello, hello. Are you there?
I'm back.
Oh,
I
good,
don't see
good.
you yet.
It might be me because I'm cloudy here. So it's.
No, I think I lost my internet connection for a
Oh, did
brief.
you? Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
I've never had that really happen before, maybe once or twice, and so I'm a little surprised. You just started talking about Pope Leo, and all of a sudden it just
Oh,
cut out.
yeah. So Pope Leo, who took that name precisely kind of to tackle this issue of, well, the fourth industrial revolution, according to the World Economic Forum, the digital revolution, which it seems like we need to have theologians that are tech savvy and possibly a pope who's tech savvy. If we don't have one now, that's already tech savvy, because it seems like Catholic moral teaching really has to address these issues now and in the near future. So, what say you? Maybe if you, maybe the Vatican will consult you and use your book.
Yeah, somebody has actually said they want to try to get moral money to the Vatican so
Oh
they can
wow.
read it, and I would love that. I'm very enthusiastic about Pope Leo and his understanding of where we are and the need to address it. And actually, I'll tell you a little spoiler here. I just about a month ago signed a contract for my next book, which is actually on artificial intelligence
Oh wow.
and the Catholic kind of Catholic guide to artificial intelligence. And so it's similar to this one in the sense that I'm taking a tech modern thing that's new and we're trying to grapple with and trying to decide okay, how is this compatible or not compatible with Catholic teaching? I mean, I come to the conclusion Bitcoin is 100% compatible with Catholic teaching. In fact, it's the most moral form of money there is.
Right.
Just a spoiler, I haven't written the book yet. I'm writing it. I won't come to the exact same conclusion on artificial intelligence, however. I'm not anti-artificial intelligence in any way,
Right.
shape, or form. I like it in a lot of ways, but there are serious moral and ethical issues related to it that the church has to address. And I'm very excited. When Pope Leo why he picked his name, I was like, okay, here we go, because he understands this is something the church has to be addressing. This new digital landscape, as you said, which includes Bitcoin, which includes AI. There's a lot of overlap between the two, the
Right.
moral issues and everything like that. And I love the fact that Leo seems to be cognizant of that, and I'm looking forward to what the Vatican produces over the coming years.
Well, God bless you. I mean, you're pretty well known in the Catholic world. May God give you a lot of wisdom, and who knows, maybe the Vatican will use some of your ideas to form moral teachings. That's what
If they
theologians
call, I'll pick up the phone. I'm
So,
happy to help.
yeah, it's so guys, get this book, Moral Money. Excellent read, and I love the way you write because it's readable for
Thank you.
especially people who don't really know anything about Bitcoin. Read it. It's
Right.
very, very interesting. And I'll give you the last word if you want to say anything to the
I,
viewers.
I appreciate anybody who wants to pick up my book. You can just go to ericsammons.com. You can pick up a signed copy of it. And I do think I understand. My last word is I understand there's hurdles to embracing Bitcoin. I understand that. But I would just say give it a chance. Learn a lot more about our money system, why it's immoral. And I think then you'll see the morality of Bitcoin.
That's right. That's right. Excellent. All right. Well, thank you. And let me know about your next I don't know if you're going to publish with Sophia, but we'll see.
It
And
is going to be a Sophia.
oh, Sophia. Okay. So I'll probably have you on again, God willing,
I'd
in the
love it.
near future. That'll be awesome. All right. So united in prayers. Thank you very much, Eric. And until next time.